Hey, what's going on guys? Arekkz here, welcome back to another video for Marvel's Avengers, and today I want to put together a quick guide on all the terminology in-game. There are so many different terms thrown around in this game between things like power level, intrinsic energy, heroic abilities, ultimate abilities, might, precision, valor, pin particles, cryo. There's just a ton of different terms, and some of them may be pretty self-explanatory, but a lot of them, there are some questions left as to exactly what they do. So in this video, it's going to be a quick sort of encyclopedia, if you will, as to all the terms that you need to know about in this game. So if you do find this helpful, then a like would be super appreciated. If you've got any questions or there's anything you still don't understand about your character or your build, let us know down below. And of course, keep it locked for plenty more Avengers content. So very quickly, there's a lot to get through here, so I'm going to try and rattle through these as quickly as possible. Power level, pretty self-explanatory. A hero's total power corresponds to the average power rating of their equipped gear. The maximum power level is 150, which is combined with 130 gear pieces plus the 10 boost, bringing that up to 140, alongside your plus 10 upgraded artifacts. The higher your character's power level, the higher their baseline statistics scaling. A character at power level 50 with 0 in precision will have more baseline range damage than a lower power level character with the same stats. Meanwhile, intrinsic energy, each hero has a unique mechanic tied to their intrinsic energy bar. Every hero can increase their intrinsic energy by using light attacks on enemies. Black Widow's is Shadow Ops, where attacking enemies without taking damage boosts the intrinsic energy meter. Filling the meter triggers an overcharged state, increasing all damage by 20%. Captain America's ties into his shield block. Holding down R2 blocks incoming attacks, which drain the intrinsic energy meter for each successful attack blocked. Strong attacks drain the entire meter, and this cannot be used to block unblockables. For Thor, you have Odin Force, which of course is when you hold down R2, you activate Odin Force, which counters incoming attacks with powerful lightning, and each counter drains the intrinsic energy meter. Miss Marvel has Polymorph, where holding down R2 activates Polymorph, which slowly drains the intrinsic energy meter, and while morphed, you dodge incoming basic attacks, and attacks inflict increased damage and impact. Iron Man has Supercharge, where Iron Man's range attacks drain the intrinsic energy meter. Filling all segments of this meter triggers an overcharged state, causing the meter to stay fully charged and increasing attack damage by 12% for 10 seconds. And then Hulk has Rage, where taking and dealing damage increases the intrinsic energy meter, and holding this down activates Rage, which slowly drains, and while in Rage mode you deal increased damage, and defeating enemies will give you some health back. Moving on from there, for your specialty skills, super quickly, but when the game refers to these different things, this is kind of important to note because obviously if you are looking at gear pieces and it calls these things out, if ever it refers to your support heroic ability, this is your L1. If ever it refers to your assault heroic ability, that is your R1, and your ultimate heroic ability is your L1 and R1 combined. As for your main stats, Might is the stat that increases your melee damage, Precision is your stat that increases range damage, Proficiency is the stat that increases critical hit chance and perk chance, Valor is your stat that increases the heroic effectiveness and critical damage, Resolve is the stat that increases max willpower, which is your health and willpower recovery effectiveness, Resilience is the stat that increases armor, and Intensity is the stat that increases your stun/status meter damage and your status resistance. Of course, the orbs that drop in game, you have your intrinsic, heroic, and regen orbs. Intrinsic orbs give a moderate boost to your intrinsic energy bar, the one at the top of the screen. Heroic orbs will boost all of your heroic ability charges, and regen orbs replenish your willpower. In terms of the offensive stuff, your offensive keywords, simple things here, but again, this ties into your gear perks. Light and heavy combo finishers refer to the end of your combo string, so the very final hit in that combo, it's normally slightly flashy, you'll kind of see it visually, but that's basically what it refers to. Signature attacks are when you hold down square, but this must of course be unlocked in your skill tree. Range power attacks is when you hold down L2 and you then hold down R2 to charge then release. A power attack is when you hold down triangle. A takedown is of course when your enemy stun meter is full. Pressing triangle and square will perform your fancy takedown animation. Stun is an attack modifier that gradually builds up on enemies, allowing for a takedown when it has reached its max. Each attack has varying levels of stun. And impact is an attack modifier that determines the interrupt potential of an attack. So low impact attacks will only influence weaker enemies, but enemies do have different impact resistance values. Now when it comes to talking about statuses, this is incredibly important. Electroshock basically sees you build shock damage to make enemies shock, which causes increased damage from incoming attacks and a greater chance for critical attacks to occur. It's basically a debuff. Gamma poisoning is where you build gamma damage to make enemies poisoned. This adds continuous damage that spreads to nearby enemies, and killing enemies while they are poisoned will cause a large gamma explosion. Cryo freeze is where you build cryo damage to make enemies freeze. This slows their movement and decreases the frequency of all actions, and it also inhibits many of their defensive abilities altogether. Pim shrink is where you build particle damage to make enemies shrink. This reduces their sizes, reduces their damage, and causes them to take more damage from all attacks. Cosmic ionization builds cosmic damage to make enemies ionized, and this causes increased damage to be taken from all attacks whilst also boosting hero willpower. Plasma burn will build plasma damage to make enemies burn, causing periodic interruption from attacks and stagger some enemies. These types can then be grouped, so you have negatively charged damage types, Cryo, Shock and Gamma. These damage types inflict increased damage against enemies suffering from the positively charged status effects that have a warm colour. Meanwhile, the positively charged damage types are Plasma, Particle and Cosmic, and these damage types inflict increased damage against enemies that are suffering from negatively charged status effects that have a cool colour. So basically, if you can kind of start to understand these, you apply one damage type, say from the positive pool. If you then dip into the negative pool, you can basically do increased damage. Then finally, when it comes to enemy statuses, a few things just worth noting here. Drain/spin, basically getting hit by this reduces the energy of your heroic ability meters, all of them. This is incredibly annoying, you basically want to avoid being hit by this. Daze is when enemies can daze a hero, temporarily obscuring their vision. Suppress is some attacks that suppress a hero, inhibiting their ability to sprint, dodge, vault, or use special movement. Weaken is where some attacks will weaken you, reducing the impact of your attacks so they no longer interrupt attacking enemies. Freeze can of course slow you or your movement, so you can partially get stuck in place, you want to spam square to get free. And Gamma is a poison cloud that will drain your willpower over time. You've also got things like Shock, Plasma and Graviton, but basically that is a rundown of all the most important terms. So you can now begin to see why we did this video, because there's a lot of terms thrown around in this game. So hopefully, in a very quick manner, that's clarified a few things for you and made it easier to understand as to what these all do. Again, any questions, drop them in the comments down below, but otherwise, thanks for watching, catch you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget, if you haven't already done so, you can join the Arekkz Gaming Discord. We've got an awesome community over there with so many different channels for you to chat loads of different topics and different games. I'm in there, the team's in there if you guys want to chat with us, find people to play with. It's just in general a great place to be. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of our future uploads.